Hey guys, so today we are going to dive into how to animate these wings. So I found this picture of these wings on just Pixabay or one of those sites that have some free royalty images. Just did some tweaking with the colors. So I figured I would show you in Photoshop how it's sort of built, and then we'll jump into After Effects. So I won't spend a lot of time in here, but kept everything fairly organized. We have some color correction. That's just some different adjustment layers. Some little highlights that are up in the corners. It's really subtle. Kind of glow, like light glows. We have some dust that is around the wings, so these kind of like little embers that are floating around. Various clouds that are in the front here, and then we have the main title. These are just broken up into some textures that are pieced together with a clipping mask on top. And then we have some dust that's in the background or down here at the bottom behind the title. Clouds that are behind the title. Then we have the wings, which are your main wings. We have some clouds that are behind the wings to just add some more depth down there. Then we have the main shadow that is on the ground, as well as the sky overlays. You can kind of see some faint clouds that are on this background. It's not necessarily totally needed, but add some more contrast to it. And then the background, which is just this of some various layers that are creating this marble cracked room look. So what I'm going to do is, now that I have all that sort of organized, I'm going to throw this whole Photoshop file into After Effects. So I've already got After Effects open, so I'm going to go right down here, and we can just say new composition. All this is fine. Our animation is going to be pretty short, probably less than 10 seconds. So now I'm just going to import my Photoshop file. So I'm going to do Control I, and I'm going to go to the one that I'm using, which is this one here. And this will pop up when you're importing a PSD if you wanted to import it as footage. We don't want to do this because I believe this kind of flattens everything together. I'm going to do composition and retain layer sizes and hit OK. So that's going to drag in all my PSD layers over here, and it just makes a big mess in this folder. But we'll ignore that for now. I'm going to go into this Messengers 1122 final. So it kind of screws up a lot of my clipping mask, which is sort of frustrating. But sometimes when you drag in After Effects files, they look perfect, and then sometimes they don't. Like, why is this texture up here, not in the right spot? So things like that are kind of frustrating. But just spend a little bit of time and fix it. So I need to fix my title first because I have all these layers on top. So I'm going to go to the title. I'm going to double click on that, and I have Messengers and then Christmas, and then Paper Copy 3, which I think is the darker version. So that's where I'll need the this black texture behind the Christmas. So I'm going to just draw a mask around that to eliminate all this other stuff around it. So I'm going to click on this little square up here. If my layer is selected and I click on the square, then it's going to draw a mask. I don't want to draw a shape layer, so I just want a mask. So I'm going to draw just a nice little rectangle somewhere around there. That's good. And then I'm going to go to the Paper Copy 2, which is the main gold texture back there, and I'm going to then draw a box around that, leaving a good amount of space on the outside, something like that. And I need to fix this Messengers one here, so I'm going to go in here and slide that over like that. Maybe cut this one down too. There we go. So that looks good. All right, I'm going to go back here to the main file. Now we're getting somewhere. So we need to fix this background layer. Not sure why. So I'm going to try to figure out what's going on with that. I think it was down here in the main background. So I'm going to go into this pre-comp and figure out which layer it is. So not that one. So for some reason it's this background copy here. So I don't know why it's doing that. And these are just various images that I got from, from those different sites. So what I'm going to do is just scale this one up. So it's not going to be exact to the original PSD, but close enough. All right, so now we're looking a lot like the main PSD. So the next thing I need to do is I need to figure out how I really want what I want the animation to be. So I'm thinking I'm going to do a slight camera kind of fly back from, probably looking tight on this title. I'm going to fly back and then have the wings maybe flap down from the top, almost like it's landing in a way. So So what I want to do first is figure out what layers need to be 3D and kind of get all those assigned. So down here in my main composition, I'm going to go down to the toggle switches and modes, click on that, and inside of here we have this little star right here is sort of like a kind of like keeping it unrasterized, and that's a terrible way of putting it, but basically it's saying everything that you have applied in this pre-comp, I want to apply it here too. So if I were to, for instance, let's take the title. If I wanted to make this title more three-dimensional, so I want this Christmas plate to be a little farther off of the messenger's title, then I would need to enable all my 3D layers inside of the title. But if I didn't, if I just wanted to make this a 3D layer, I could turn this off, and then I could make my layer 3D by clicking this little square or this little cube icon. And so now it's a 3D layer, but if I rotate it, so I'm going to rotate it now, it's very flat, right? So the only way to get this to then, you know, add some of that 3D element to it is I need to go back, and I'm going to turn this off for now. I'm going to turn this one back on, and I'm going to go to my title, and then inside of here I need to make these layers 3D. So I'm going to toggle these switches, and I'm going to make all these layers 3D. And I don't think I need to go any farther down because I just want to separate these few. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to attach my Christmas to the paper copy 3. So what I'm going to do that is grab this little pick whip and attach it to paper copy 3. And now wherever I move this paper copy 3, it's going to move the Christmases one as well. So I'm going to hit V on the keyboard for my move tool, take my mouse right over the top of the axis, and I want the Z. I'm going to pull it towards the camera a little bit. And if you want to see how far you're really getting, you can go to active camera and then some of these different custom views. I'm going to do custom view 1, and you can see now that it's kind of separated here, and that's probably about right. It looks a little far, but I think we're kind of cheating it in the 3D move. It'll feel just right. So, and if not, we'll come back and tweak what it looks like. So that looks good. I don't think we need to do much more here. We may come back and add maybe a drop shadow or something, but we'll do that at the end. So you can see it then right there, and it kind of jumped forward, and that means that now it's a 3D layer. So now, since this one's turned on and I go to the 3D button, I can then rotate this, and you can see that now it is sort of separated in 3D space. So when I add a camera and start moving it, those will shift just like they should. So so that's why that little thing is pretty important. All right. So the next thing is, so we got our title done. We need to, let's think about these this wall here. So I want to make this look like a room, like it's actually a wall with a floor. So if I go here and I go to the 3D view, I need to start activating these as 3D. So I'm going to click on this little button here, and let's see what else we can do here. So I'm going to go into my background, and I'm going to turn all these on 3D. These things here we can ignore. We can just really just turn on these as 3D, I believe. So let's crank those on. Let's go back, and now it's starting to show up, which is what we're looking for. Make sure everything looks fine. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm probably going to duplicate this layer. Let's see. Some of this is me sort of still figuring things out. So I think what I'm going to do is go into the background and remove this floor here, because I'm going to recreate that with 3D layers. So I'm going to scale up. I guess I'm going to really scale up both of these images. Let's actually do that inside of the main comp. So this one looks fine. So I'm going to go back to my background and go into this texture, and this is the one I'm going to scale up here. So I'm going to hit S on the keyboard. I'm going to scale this up. I don't want to go too high and start losing quality, but just go as big as I can without going crazy. So about 122, 125. All right, so now if I turn my sky overlay off, now I just have this flat look, and that's cool with me. So then I'm going to, now that I have this one as a 3D layer, I'm going to duplicate that by hitting Command D, and this one's going to be my floor. So what I'm going to do is hit W on the keyboard. I'm going to kind of scoot in here, and then I want to rotate it on its X axis. So I'm going to take my mouse right on top of the X axis, and when it shows me that little X, that means I'm going to just affect that one. So then I'm going to click and I'm going to start rotating. I'm going to hold down Shift so it kind of rotates on the plane. So I'm going to make it completely flat at first, and then I'm going to hit V on the keyboard, drag the mouse right over the Z axis, and drag this down here. All right, so this is going to be my floor. I'm going to need to scale it up a little bit because I'm running out of room here. So I'm going to hit S on the keyboard. I'm going to scale that up. Now I'm running into some weird things here. Let's see if we can solve that. Let's see. Actually, no, I think that all that'll be fixed. Let's see. Let's move on and figure out if we can solve it later. All right. So then let's take a look. I'm gonna go back here and go to Custom View 1. Just try to figure out why that's happening. So then let's see. So then I want to move this one. I'm gonna move this one back a little bit and see what happens. Figure out what layer is causing that. So this is my floor. I can hit enter and rename that floor. I wonder if I do need to go in and make these 3D as well. That might be the case. Okay, now I'm just making a big mess. Scale this up. Let's go in here. So I'm going to go in and double check and make sure all of these are, maybe these need to be 3D as well. Oops. I'm going into all these layers and just making sure everything is 3D. Maybe these need to be 3D. Yeah, there we go. So I guess maybe need to go all the way back and make sure all these are turned on as 3D. Maybe this crack needs to be 3D as well. All right, so yeah, so that's getting there. All right, so I'm gonna go back to my floor, and I think I have this little line here. Maybe if I push it back a little bit, let's see if that fixes that. No, I think maybe it's blending with the other one. No, let's see. Let's double check this background here. All right, so I'm gonna move that up to almost, yeah, let's see. Now let's go back to the active camera. So I just got it just on the side there, and that's about right. So a little tweaking there you might have to do. This feels pretty good. I think what I would probably do then is maybe, let me add the sky overlay in and see what happens. That's adding a little more realism to it. And that's 3D. Let's go and just make sure all these are 3D as well. Just going all the way back to make sure all the pieces are 3D. And we can double check where that one is, because we don't want that one floating in midair. I want this one to be pretty much in line with that background. You can even go to the left view, and then I can push this all the way back. So you can see here's my floor, here's my wall, and my clouds, and my title right there. So now we're getting somewhere. Then I just need to adjust the scale of that. This is sort of the boring part of getting Photoshop files ready in After Effects, but once you get it all set, it's good to go. So I'm gonna hit T on the keyboard. I'm gonna turn this opacity down a good bit on those clouds, something like that. And I could probably even darken up this floor a little bit. I could click on the floor, maybe go to maybe hue and saturation, and drop that lightness down just to. I don't like that very much. Let's do maybe levels or curves, color correction. Let's start with levels and see if I can get a little more contrast there. That's a little too much. Okay, so moving on. We want to focus on these wings. That's what we're here for. So this looks good. Now if I go to the wings, let's do, let's go and turn this one on 3D. We're going to come back to the dust and the clouds and all that stuff later on. So let's go to the wings, and I'm going to go into the wings and again make these 3D. I don't think I need to go any deeper than that. Yeah, because I think these can really just be flat. I don't need to, there's no other pieces. Actually, I can probably just turn that off completely because I don't need, there's no more depth to these. I'm going to do all that within this layer here. So I can really turn this little button off and then just focus on these wings here. So I'm going to do one wing at a time. So we're going to duplicate our wings, and we'll say this one is our left wing, and this one is our right wing. And I'm duplicating by Command D. So I'm going to go to the left wing, and I'm going to draw a mask around just this wing. So I can turn off my right wing for now. And so the left wing, I'm going to click on my mask and just draw a box around it. There we go. All right, cool. So now we just have this wing. So the first thing I did, so I've already started the project, and that's why I posted. I thought maybe this would be a good tutorial. So the first thing I did was just focus on the main movement, and then I did all the bending and kind of distorting of the wing. So originally I was going to try to do this in Cinema 4D and make this sort of a somewhat of a model, shape and try to get more bend, but I wasn't having much luck, and I was sort of out of it and done for the day. So I decided, well, let me try it in After Effects and see what kind of effects I can get from it. So it turned out okay. So I thought, let's do it all in After Effects. All right, so I got my left wing, and what I want to do is I want to move my anchor point, which is this little guy here, probably to somewhere around here. So if this was attached to a angel or a bird or whatever, where would it be originate? Where would the movement be originating from? Where would the joint be, basically? So I'm going to put it like right around in here. First I need to lock this mask down because I can't move this thing without affecting the mask. So I'm going to click on my left wing, hit M, and then click on this little lock right there. And so now my mask is locked and good to go. All right, so to move this little guy, I'm going to hit Y on the keyboard, and that's going to give me this tool, whatever it's called. And let's see, what's this called? Pan behind tool for some reason. So then I'm going to just click and drag it over here, somewhere probably around there. Okay, and we can actually turn off our title. We don't need this one on anymore for now. Okay, tell you what, let's just turn off these clouds too. Let's turn off all this stuff we don't need. Let's focus on this wing. All right, our mask is running, got a little bit too much, a little too far on that mask, so I'm going to adjust that real quick and pull this back this way. There we go. Lock that back down. Okay, so now let's focus on the movement. So I'm going to the only thing I'm going to be moving for now is the rotation. So I'm going to hit R on the keyboard, and I'm going to be messing with the orientation. All these other ones I'm just going to leave blank. So the first thing I want to do is lock it where it's going to finalize. So I want to make sure I got that set and ready. So let's do maybe at 5 or so. Let's go 6 seconds, and then I'm going to click on my orientation, and so now that rotation is locked right there. So then I'm going to just backtrack from there. So let's slide maybe about 1.5 seconds or so, and then let's say I want the last movement to be, before it actually comes to a stop, is to be up. So we're going to go up this way. All right, and then I do want it to sort of rotate in 3D space. Now I can't go too far, because if I go too far, then I'm kind of busted, because everybody says, oh well, you just have a flat layer. So I don't want to go too far. I just want to give the illusion that it is sort of thick, without showing that it's completely flat. So let's go something like that, and then we can maybe even rotate forward and backwards this way. But again, too much and you're gonna start revealing your secret. So somewhere around in there, and then actually let's probably go maybe a tad bit higher. Okay, and then I'm going to scoot back down, and so now the next point is going to be all the way down. So I'm going to go back to that Z, and again I'm putting my I'm hitting W on the keyboard to get that rotation tool, and then I'm putting it right over the axis that I want to change. So I'm going to do Z, and then somewhere around there, and then I'm going to rotate it again this way, not too much, just a little bit. And I could go in here, and then I can just copy. So now I want to basically go right back up. So I could just, I can highlight this keyframe that I made and hit copy, and then paste it right there. So that's right back where it was. I don't want it to be just right because it's going to be different every time. So I'm going to go maybe a little bit higher, maybe rotate it a little more towards the camera, maybe a little like that. So it's not going to be the same every single time. So I can take this down, keyframe, post it in there, and then again tweak my rotation just a little bit. Okay, then we'll do another one up high, which was here. Copy paste. Well, that looks pretty good. Okay. Then I guess we'll do one more down. So we'll just take this one here, copy and paste. Okay. So let's see what we got. So I'm going to set my little brackets here by hitting N and B to right here is just what I want to render. I'm going to drop my quality down just a bit. And let's see what we're working with. All right, so this looks ridiculous right now because it's very static and pretty lame. So to smooth that out a little bit, I need to highlight all of these, and then I have a keyboard shortcut for my Easy Ease, or you can right click and do Keyframe Assistant Easy Ease. And then I'm going to go into my graphic editor, click on this little button here, and you can see now it's a little bit better, but we need to make this even more realistic. So zooming in with the plus and minus keys, I'm going to move this down some. All right, so then I'm just going to highlight these little points and start pulling these handles to where it starts very slow, ramps up super fast, and then slows right back down, much like a bird would do. Okay, this one's probably okay. So now let's see what we got. Okay, so then maybe let's see. So I probably want these to rotate maybe a little more toward the camera. You gotta kind of think about like what would a bird's wing do? You know, here it would probably rotate down to push that wind down, something like that. Might be a little bit extreme on that rotation there. Okay, so this to me is moving a little too slow, so I'm going to highlight all of these and hold down Option, and then I can click and drag. So we're going to cut a second off of this time and see if this feels a little bit better. And really, maybe it's maybe a little too extreme, so we could come back and start, you know, tweaking some of these so it's not quite extreme. So again, some of these may be a little bit too extreme. Turn that down just a bit. It's all just fine-tuning to give it that realistic look. All right, so that's a decent start. We'll start with that. So the next thing I did was started adding a few distorting plugins on it. So I went through a few trying to figure out which one I wanted to do, and I think I ended up just doing, let's see, I went to Effect, and I went to Blur and I went to Distort. And which did I do? I think I just did Mesh Warp, I believe is what I did. So I clicked on that, and then this is way too many points to worry about, so I took this down a good bit. So I think I maybe just did like 4 and 4. So really the only things that are going to get a let's do maybe 5 columns. Let's do 5 and 5 maybe. Okay, let's try that and see. So I'm really going to be just messing with these points that are around here. So what's happening is this is just a mesh, kind of like when you do a warp in Photoshop. So I can click these points and then start pulling them around and affecting the wings. So before I start doing too much, I'm going to just tweak these and see if this is really how I want this to be set. If not, then I should change these numbers back a little bit to make sure my wing is going to move like I want it to move whenever I distort it. So this is probably fine. Yeah, let's give it a go. Okay, so then I started thinking about, okay, well, what's a wing gonna do? So when a wing is gonna come, up to the very top, it's going to sort of the momentum is sort of gonna bend that wing up as it reaches its top. So I don't want to do exactly on these keyframes. So let's just start right here. So I'm gonna go probably to about the middle, somewhere around the middle, and then I need to start bending this wing a little bit. So I'm gonna click on the mesh warp, and then it kind of activates that that graph, and then I'm going to start bending this wing a little bit. So I'm gonna click on the points and then start pulling this back, just like I was warping something in Photoshop. And I hope I get the same effect that I was getting in my first run, because it felt right. So you can even start kind of pulling these like it's, whoa, like it's stretching. And you don't want to go too crazy, or again, it's gonna show off that it's flat and silly looking. Okay, so that looks good. Then you want to click on your distortion mesh keyframe, and then it sets a little keyframe right there. And so if I come back here, so probably about here is going to be the bottom of this bend. So then I'm going to click and rotate this bend. I'll be fairly aggressive with it, because at the end of the day, we're going to add like motion blur and some stuff on there to get a little more. Oh, I hate when I do that. Gotta click on these points. Bend this down. So this is a great tool for faking some movements here. And luckily these wings are super cool, that the shadow and the lighting and everything works really well. So it definitely gives the illusion that these are actually a 3D model. So okay, so let's see how this is looking. So I think that could even get more extreme, that bend there. So I'm going to keep on tweaking that. I'm going to push this up some more. Pull these up. Oh, man, every time. Really stretch those out. See, like that point doesn't really do a whole lot, but come on. Okay, we could tweak this literally forever. All right, so here is when I want it to bend all the way down. So then I can just take this keyframe here, copy it, and paste it, and see what that does. All right, so you can see it's sort of pulling back against that wind. So then I'm going to probably do some more harsh bending there. Really pull it back. Give a nice rotation on that. We'll keep the wing true to itself, so it needs to try to, as if there were little bones in there that it was bending. Yeah, see how that kind of flaps down and then pulls back up like it's fighting against the gravity, which is pretty cool. Pull this one back a little bit. Again, you could tweak and tweak and tweak. Okay, so then again, I'm just gonna take this keyframe from the very top and paste that in there. So then it pulls up and fights that wind again. I think we could even get a little more extreme there. I keep getting more and more extreme every time I pull these wings. Yep, this thing is sort of frustrating. There we go. Maybe rotate it that way some. Out of memory. Okay, cool. All right, so After Effects decided to crash on me. So I'm going to jump into the project I was working on yesterday, just because the wing is moving more like I planned it to, and I'm not having to rush it too much. So, but there's nothing really new there to learn. We're going to talk about the shadow in a second, but you know, it's all just comes down to tweaking those little finite details with you know, the bending and the distorting. But there's nothing new. I don't think that I've covered really. I just use these are all old. But just using that mesh warp and having it rotated. This one rotates a lot or moves a lot faster and animates from 0 to about 4 seconds. So that could be a little bit of it too. I believe we talked about motion blur, maybe not. So, you know, to add a little bit more to the realism, I added a motion blur to it. So in order to do that, you go to the wings and you click on this little button right here, which is motion blur for that layer, and then you turn it on globally right there. So that gives this quick motion blur effect. I'm going to turn it off for now just to save on render times, but this one moves a lot nicer. I think maybe my rotation towards the camera is a little more extreme, which is giving it a nice look. So again, all that just comes down to tweaking those rotation values and your distorted layer on top. So now we're going to jump into talking about the shadow. So you can see that the shadow is moving with the wing. So the way I did that is I just abandoned the shadow that I had on there already. So I did have this shadow layer. So let me go in here and turn these off. So I did have this shadowy layer. I just got rid of that. So I'm not even going to use that because I need this wing to move just like this one's doing. So what I did, and I'm going to relabel these like I did in the first one. So this is the left wing. And then, so what I did is I ended up just duplicating my wing. So I can go hit Command D to duplicate that, and then turn my bounding boxes and stuff back on. So then I just moved it down. So I don't have any position keyframes on this wing layer, so I can just click and move it, and it'll still rotate and flap around like it's supposed to. So I'm going to pull it down right about there. And then what I want to do is it's not going to let's change the color first, actually. So the next thing I did was I didn't want to throw just a color overlay on top of this. I wanted just to desaturate it and really make it really dark. So I went to Effect and went to Color Correction and then Hue and Saturation, and I just turned this pretty much all the way down and dropped my lightness pretty far down, something like that. And then I added a blur to it. So I went to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, and Fast Box Blur, which is a pretty simple blur that doesn't take a whole lot of space or memory. Probably bump this to maybe 15. Let's see what that does. Let's start there. So then I'm going to squish it down. I'm going to grab this top little box up here. Actually, I need to lock that mask. Hit M on the keyboard, lock that mask, and now I can squish this down a good bit. And now I don't want it to rotate so much to where it's on this wall back here. So if a light was shining straight down, it's you know, it's not really going to move a whole lot. You're just going to see it moving just a slight bit. So I'm going to go in here and adjust all the rotation points for this wing. So I'm going to hit W on the keyboard and just pull it back down to where it's right above where the wall hits. And again, I can squeeze these a little bit more like that. And I'm going to go down here, and I don't want to rotate that far, so I'm going to back that up. But it's super important that it stays. You don't move these keyframes around because it needs to mimic exactly what's happening on the main wing. So to make sure you're on your keyframe, this one doesn't quite line up because I moved them down a little bit earlier. But as long as this little blue diamond is lit up, then you're on that keyframe. So I'm gonna again adjust these down some. Down, there we go. And we'll slide this down. And I'm holding down, when I'm moving my playhead, I'm holding down Shift so that it kind of locks onto that keyframe. It makes it a lot easier than trying to do it frame by frame. So somewhere around there. And then this one down here can be right there, it's fine. All right, so that looks good. Again, I'm gonna squish it down even more. I'm gonna blur it even more. We're gonna go to like 30. You know what, let's get crazy and go to 40. And then I'm gonna turn that opacity way down. So I'm gonna hit T on the keyboard for opacity. And then I'm gonna make this maybe 30%. Let's go 35. Something like that. Maybe pull this blur back some, 32. Okay. So then I want to make sure that the wing movement or the shadow movement feels good. So I'm going to just do a little render preview of this, make sure everything feels good. So again, this is the same layer that's just color corrected and blurred and then moved around a little bit. All right, so that feels good. Let's go with that. So then the next thing I'm going to do is take this layer again and duplicate it one more time. And I'm going to probably drop the, well, let's leave the blur for now. And I'm going to squish it down even more and kind of pull it back towards the anchor point there. So you get this a little bit more defined area on the shadow, and then it kind of has more of a fall off there. So let's do something like that. We could even maybe move it up just a little bit. All right, probably turn that one down some. So this was here. Let's bump this down to maybe 25%. All right, so that just adds a tad bit more realistic look to the shadow. And the movement looks good. So that works for me. So that's how you make that nice little shadow. And now we are going to move on to doing a little camera movement. So to do this, I'm going to add a camera, and we're going to go up to Layer, New, and Camera. I'm going to hit OK. And so you can see it kind of adjusts based on the lens selection, and that's all fine and dandy for now. We can go in and scale some of these up. I'm actually going to just attach all of these layers as if they're one big background. They're all just going to attach to the wall, and I'm going to hit S on the keyboard and then just scale that whole thing up there like that. I could probably move it up a little bit, something like that. Okay, so now let's talk about this camera. So I've added a camera. You could go in and start tweaking these keyframes in here if you want, but personally I like to add a layer, new, and go to null object, and basically treat this as like a tripod or a camera head or a dolly or something. So we're just going to call this movement. And to rename these layers, you just click on the layer and hit enter. You can rename it. And then I'm going to pretty much, just like you would in real life, attach this camera to my whatever is moving it, tripod or dolly or whatever it's going to be. So I'm just going to click on this little pick whip and drag it up here. So now this, whatever this movement does, this camera is going to do. So I'm going to click on movement, and for it to move the camera in 3D space, it has to also be a 3D layer. So I'm going to click on the 3D button. And now if I go up here and click on this little playhead and move it in, or not playhead, but the Z axis, and move it in 3D space, everything moves with it. So now we're on to something. And we're going to go down here, probably go to about 5, and the camera sort of stop a second or so after the wings stop moving. So now I can set some keyframes. So I'm going to hit P on the keyboard, or P on the keyboard for my move tool, or for my position parameter, and then I'm going to click on the stopwatch. And now this is locking in this position here. Then I'm going to hit R on the keyboard to lock in a rotation, just because I might do a slight, tilt or something. If you hit U on the keyboard when you have a layer selected, it'll show you all the layers that are have keyframes on, or the pieces that have keyframes on them. So now I'm going to move forward all the way to the beginning, and I'm going to take my mouse up to the Z axis, put the right on top where that Z shows up, and I'm going to push all the way in to the title. Now this looks silly, it's all pixelated and terrible looking, but I'm probably going to animate this different later. So we're going to go in pretty far, and I'm going to add just a slight rotation on that same keyframe, just a little bit for fun. And then I'm going to highlight all of these, set that easy ease by, you can right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, I just have a keyboard shortcut of 1. Make sure they're highlighted, and then I'm going to click on my graphic editor and do a nice slow approach, something like that. Probably do a pretty fast start and then the slow approach. Okay. So let's take a look at that and see what we're working with. I'm gonna drop my quality down and do a little render of that. Cool. Okay, so you can see that it kind of launches off and then slowly comes to a stop, and that looks pretty good to me. So the next thing we could do is start messing with these clouds. So we want these to move in 3D space as well, because right now they're just sitting there. They're not moving in 3D space at all, and looks a little silly. So let's go into some of these cloud layers. So let's go here, and again, we're doing the same thing we did earlier, is turning on our 3D layer, but we're also going to turn them on inside of the pre-comp. So as long as that little star is on, we'll double click on this, turn these layers on, and you can move these in 3D space as well. So we can maybe push them up here. We can click on this one, and we can push this one up some, whatever we want to do. And then so now you can see them kind of adjust there. So if I start moving, that cloud layer is moving as well, which looks nice. Okay, so let's do that for the rest of them. Let's go to, so that was clouds, this is clouds here. Let's turn it on 3D layer, double click on that, and turn these on. So now we can move these around a little bit as well. Now we do want to make sure, so we're behind the title, but we're not behind the wing, so we're in between the two. So I'm going to just make sure that that's they're not crossing paths at all. So let's go back to this cloud layer. Excuse me. I'm just going to move them around just a little bit. I don't want these to be stuck together on the same plane. So I just have to make sure that I'm not on top of my title. There we go. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. We'll go down to clouds. This bottom layer. So this is behind everything. This is behind the wings and the title card. I'm going to push these back a little farther here. Okay. I do have some animated cloud layers, which I'll probably use in the final, but for now this will work. Okay, so you can see these cloud layers here. Hopefully they're showing up on your screen, but you can see they're now moving in 3D space, and it looks like they're floating in the room, which is pretty cool. All right, so we're running into some, let's see. We have some issues here with our shadow intersecting with the floor. So let's see if we can fix that. Let's see here if we just maybe move these up some. So we can move them up. I don't really love that too much, but I think, let's see. Maybe we'll just move everything back down to this background. I think that's what happened, is I moved my background and it's starting to show up there. So this needs to stay pretty low. Then I'm just going to move it back maybe this direction. If I do that, I'll just need to scale up some of these things individually, which is no big deal. Floor is up. I might need to disconnect these from the floor and then, or this wall. Scale this up as well. So that's fine for now. Okay. So you get the idea there. Probably some more fine tuning we could do. We could maybe take these wings back this way a little bit. There we go. Okay. Where was I? Clouds. So yeah, the clouds are moving 3D space. I would probably even go a step further and add a couple more cloud layers. So clouds on top of everything. So let's do, click on one of these cloud layers. I'm going to duplicate that. I'm just going to drag this up at the very top here. And now I'm going to just pull these way up to the camera. Let's pull this camera back here so we can figure out where these cloud layers are. So you can see them right here. So now if the camera moves, we can even duplicate it again. Maybe push these a little farther back. Maybe slide them down here. All right, so now they're even closer to the camera. So as I move close, that just gives a little bit more perspective and depth to the image. So, all right. Next thing I would do is tweak these little dust particles here. I would probably do this, and will probably do this with like Trapcode Particular, which is a third-party plugin, to create some floating particles by this sign here, because these wouldn't be stagnant and stuck together. But we'll just make it 3D for now, and we'll leave it right there. And so that kind of updates right there. We can maybe pull these forward some to get them on top of that, on top of the title card. Scale them down some. So let's do a quick little render and see what we're working with. I don't want to do it in full. We'll do a third. So you can see there the particles are moving in 3D space. We have these clouds right here, which looks pretty cool. And I'll probably have these maybe drift a little to the left with just a position keyframe. And hopefully the animation on those will work. So that adds a lot of depth. It's really cool. My shadow is probably a little too blurry. I need to fine tune that some. Squish it down a little more. I don't think it would be quite as soft, but okay. So this looks pretty cool. What else would I do to this? We've gotten all our layers kind of moving in 3D space. I would animate my title. I'm probably not going to do that now because I really just wanted to focus on how I did the wings. But I'll probably have these maybe come down from the top. Oh, let's talk about how I'd move. I wouldn't have these wings just flapping here by themselves. I would have them kind of float down a little bit. Got a little cloud issue right there, but we'll deal with that later. So if I wanted to have these like they were kind of floating down from up above, I'm going to connect them to a main movement just like we did our camera, so I don't have to keyframe them all separately. So let's pretend, let me turn these on here. This is my shadow. Left wing, let's see. Let's duplicate this and let's call this right wing. And then I'm going to do the mask, and I can now move this over and I have my right side wing. Now I don't want to use the rotation on this because this is going to be all kinds of wonky. Kind of looks like he's dancing. So for now I'm just going to turn off all these parameters on this right wing. I just wanted to add this wing in here so you can see what I'm going to do for the main movement. So I'm going to take these wings and add a null object. So layer, new, and null object. And then I'm going to put it right above the two wings, and we'll call this wing position. And I'm going to attach these two wings to that position. Boom. Make that a 3D layer so that it can move with it. And now I can have these kind of float down from the top. So I'm going to lock in a keyframe here, hit position, lock in a keyframe, and then move forward. Let's just go all the way to the beginning, and then I'm going to just grab my Y position and push that up. So I'm going to highlight this, easy ease, and easy ease that as well. Stretch that down so it's nice soft landing, and let's render that out and see. So I don't think the wings would really float down quite as smooth. They would kind of, drop quickly, then stop based on where the wings are flapping. And slowly come to a stop like a bird would. But this is fine for now. So you would have to add some extra keyframes in here and tweak the timing, but this gives you an idea. So let's see it one more time. So yeah, not too bad. We can spend more time on that later, but that's how I would do that. So I'm not having to do position keyframes on both of these wings, and they move together. So that feels pretty good. And with the rotation on the this wing, if they're slightly different, then I think it'll feel a little more realistic. So they're gonna be really close, but they'll all have their different movements. Okay, so the other little thing I would do is maybe add some expressions to my camera, some wiggle. So think of it as someone's holding the camera and it's just had this slight breathing movement to it. And the way I'm going to do that is add a expression to the position and the rotation. So don't let this scare you. It's really about the only expression I know that and how to actually use it without looking it up on the internet. But what I'm going to do is hit P, click on my camera. I don't want to do it to the movement. I want to do it to the camera. I'm going to hit P on the keyboard, and then you're going to get this little position stopwatch. I'm going to hold down Option, click on that, and it's going to say this little, give me this little box here. So expressions involve a lot of math and algebra and all kinds of stuff that I don't understand anymore. So I'm just going to use wiggle. So I'm going to type in wiggle, W-I-G-G-L-E, and then I'm going to add a parentheses. And then I'm going to add two different values. So one is sort of the frequency, and then one is sort of the amount. So this is going to be my frequency. Maybe it's per frame or something. I'm not sure what the actual value is, but I'm going to do maybe 0.5, and then I'm going to add a comma, and I'm going to do, let's say 4. Then I'm going to close that parenthesis. So it's saying, you know, this is your speed and this is your amount. So I'm going to just copy this little thing here, and I'm going to click on the camera. And I'm going to hit R on the keyboard, and I'm going to click on the rotation, again holding down Option to get this little box, and then paste in my expression. And now the rotation needs to be pretty subtle as far as numbers go. So let's try just 0.2 and 1 and see what happens. So it should give you this breathing movement. And I'm going to move my render section down here a little bit. Let's render that out and see what happens. So you should start to see just slight movement in the camera, kind of swaying around, and we can see some there. So I think we need to add a little bit more. So I'm going to go to my rotation, add maybe an extra little value there. If I hit U twice, then it'll give it a little bit more. So we're going to do maybe 8. Let's just double that and see what happens. All right, so now we're all over the place. And it's a little bit too much there, so let's go down to 5. And this is just tweaking these numbers to where it gets what you're looking for. I don't want too crazy of a movement. See, that's still just a little bit too much going on. So it's all just tweaking these numbers just right. Maybe 0.5. This shouldn't be so much. Let's go to go back to 4, and let's bump this up to maybe 1. So again, that first number is sort of the frequency, and then the second number is your amount. So now the position's moving a little bit faster. That feels pretty good. It's that movement's still a bit too much. I might need to bump that down to 3. And these, yeah, that rotation number can be pretty small to get it just right. I need to adjust a few of my layers back here. We can see these lines coming through, but so there we go. So now it kind of feels like I'm in a breathing camera. Everything's moving together, and it looks nice. I don't think my particles are moving quite right. Let me double check that. Dust. 3D layer. Oh, there's another one down here. That would be why. There we go. So those should move right. So that's really about it. I'm going to do some fine tuning to this. I'll probably add the particle effects in there. I'll probably add the actual animated clouds and tweak a few things. But that's really the extent of the animation. So I'm going to sort of pause the video and come back and show you the final, and then talk about what I did tweak and added. But I really hope this was something that was interesting and not too complicated. But it just goes to show that you can do a lot of trickery and stuff with some of the different effects in After Effects, and not have to be all fancy with a 3D program. So yeah, this is feeling good. Okay, cool. Well, I'll be back to show you the final, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, so the final is done and rendered. Let's take a look at the final full version here. So there's our two wings now flapping. We have some clouds going on in the foreground and on it, spread out in 3D space. Let's see if we can just do that. Can we just loop this a couple times? Then we have some particles floating in there, and the title comes flying in. So I'll talk about really quickly what I added. Any little things that I might have missed. So, but overall, this feels pretty good. So. Yeah, so let's take a quick look at the final version in After Effects. So I did the other wing. I just mimicked the same type of process. There was I took that main wing logo, or not logo, but a main wing layer, and duplicated it and added that mask, adjusted my anchor point, and then went through and did all of the keyframes. I kind of just matched them up with the left wing, and they're slightly off by a few frames just so that it's not completely symmetrical. And then I tweaked the rotation as well to add a little bit more difference in each wing, and then also did the mesh layer, so where it kind of followed the same bending and movement. So that's really all I did there, and then I did the same thing that we did with the shadows. So all that stuff we've already covered already, so I don't really need to go through all of that. And I attached it to this null here so I could rename that movement. So both of these wings are attached to that movement layer, so it's just a simple movement there on the wing. So you can see that it sort of, it's hard to tell here, but flaps and slows down. And all I did is I set my keyframe with the final here, and then somewhere around there I set another keyframe, and I didn't really change a whole lot besides making those layers easy ease so that it actually does slow down as it approaches each layer. So it's pretty close to a realistic effect. So that's all I did there. I did the shadow on the ground, which looks good. And then let's see, the messenger's title. All I did there was went into the title and then just added a simple keyframe with the position. So the Christmas kind of comes in down from the top, and there's a little bit of space in between those, so it has a nice little effect. And then I added, let's see, we did the clouds already. I turned off my old dust layers and ended up adding a particles layer. To do that, I used Trapcode Particular. Now, it's sort of an expensive plugin, but it works wonders. And it's way better than any of the other in-house plugins that you would get for particle simulation. But all this is, if I can turn this off, is some kind of orange and yellow and sort of off-white particles floating in there, and they're just slowly drifting to the right, and there's some little bit of turbulence on that, and all this stuff is inside of the particular plugin. So I'm not going to go through how to really do all that, but I just added that in there. So now I have these nice particles floating by, and it adds just a little bit more realistic. It's kind of meant to be surreal. So what these are coming from, what they really mean, I don't really know. It's just kind of add this surreal vibe to it. So I think that covers all the little different layers that I've added since we stopped. So I hope you like it. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions on any of this, or I went too fast, or I wasn't too clear on something, please add a comment into the below, and we'll try to answer those and hopefully clarify anything that you missed. So thanks again for checking it out. Thanks for being a part of the group and for watching, and I look forward to the next one.